Congratulations on this film, this project, The Argument.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, so what initially attracted you to something like a very funny comedy like The Argument?
Um, well, firstly, I don't really get a chance to do a lot of comedy as an actress. I've done a lot of drama, so I'm always really receptive to comedies. But in particular, this one, I loved that it had a very play, like theatrical sense to it. You know, it almost felt like you're watching a theater piece instead of watching a film in some ways. And so I thought that could be really interesting. I loved the characters and how it really is a six-hander, and every single character has like their moment. Yeah, it just seemed like it would be a riot to shoot.
So, without any experience in too much experience in comedy, and you're not, you don't, do you do a lot of theater yourself?
I've done some theater, but it's definitely not like my background training was not in theater.
So how did you want to approach a character like Lisa? I mean, this is far out from anything that you played before.
Yeah, well, you know, I think you know, you always try to be the advocate for your character, and so, you know, while I've never played a character like this, I have been an actress for, you know, essentially half of my life, and I 100% relate to the feeling that Lisa has of, you know, being struggling and wanting to have that next step, you know, forward in her career, and hoping that, you know, the job that she's on will be the thing that gets her to the next level. And all of those things are something that actors feel all the time, no matter where they are in their career. And I've certainly felt it many times in my career. So, so to me, it was very, very easy to tap into Lisa. But obviously, you know, this film is bigger than life in a lot of ways. And so it was just really fun to take that reality of that feeling and allow it to kind of go off into this pretty farcical, almost ridiculous world that we end up doing with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I was laughing so much in this film that I even forgot what the argument was all about.
Don't they all? They all forget what the argument's about.
So how did you want to handle, like, basically it's almost like a Groundhog Day, like replaying the same scenes over and over again, but you always replay it differently in its own way. I mean, that's that's
Right.
a hard thing to do.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, it was really fun. Our director, Robert, gave us about a week of rehearsal time, which is kind of unheard of in filmmaking. That doesn't usually happen. You don't usually have the luxury of rehearsing. You usually just sort of, maybe you rehearse a few times day of, but you know, film and theater are very different in that way. So he approached it like a play, and that gave us a lot of insight into how to make every single night of the argument unique and different and specific to what was going on at that moment. And I think, like, the lesson to be learned is that who doesn't want to know who would be right in an argument? I've certainly had that conversation with my husband before. But the lesson is that you can't prove who's right. Just, you know, it's just everyone has their own perspectives, and the more you try to stick to repeating the exact same thing, the more outlandish and ridiculous the whole exercise becomes. So yeah, it was really fun to shoot that.
Well, there were several things, outlandish things that you had to do throughout the entire
Oh
film.
my gosh.
So,
Yeah.
well,
Yes.
what was the most uncomfortable thing you personally had to do?
um it's one of my favorite parts of the for my character. It's one of my favorite parts of her development, but it was definitely very strange to have to do all the, like, lamby pamby stuff, you know, acting like a little sheep and running around as a full-grown adult woman, running around a dinner party, pretending to be a lamb and being chased by a wolf was, for Emma, so ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, I would never have done that in my own party, but for Lisa, it made total sense for what she was trying to accomplish that night. So, you know, you just have to like, dive right into those moments. Like a moment that makes you uncomfortable like that, you just sort of have to like give it your all. Because if you give it 50%, it's going to come off like uncomfortable for everybody. And I think it is a little uncomfortable for everyone because it's just, it's so silly. But we really dove into those choices and tried to have the best time we could with them.
But the entire idea is to show off that uncomfortableness, scene after scene. I mean,
Yeah,
really
and the fact that you know, they're so oblivious to it. You know, like Dan Fogler plays my boyfriend's character, and his character and my character are so oblivious to the fact that they are making this situation super uncomfortable for everybody because they're so caught in their own neuroses of trying to figure out who's right that they fail to see that they're making all their friends confused and uncomfortable, and in part, you know, the audience is watching as well, and it's kind of like, oh no, that's such an awful, oh no, and they're trying this. It's not until we get everybody on the same page that, you know, that the tone shifts from being an awkward kind of uncomfortable comedy to being this crazy like noises off style comedy, which I love that juxtaposition. I think the beginning where it is really uncomfortable is some of the best scenes in the film, because we've all been to dinner parties that get uncomfortable, haven't we all been there where, you know, where someone's history is being played out in front of us and we kind of look at our friends or our significant others, you know, side eye and wonder how this is going to go.
Well, yeah, you know, people love drama at dinner parties. That's true.
Yeah, and especially a dinner party full of Hollywood people. We love our drama.
That's right. Speaking of uncomfortable, one of the things I kept on thinking is like, how did you guys pull it all off? Basically, mostly filming everything in one room or one house with so many people, and not to mention the camera, you know, the crew is also in that room.
It was a lot. Obviously, with COVID, you wouldn't be able to do that now. You know, we shot this April of last year. Yeah, you're tightly packed in. I was so impressed with the crew, honestly, because there were 6 main characters and we're all scattered out around in this one living room situation. And then you have the film crew, and for most of the film, it's a handheld camera. So our DP had to be sort of like walking around us, and as you know from watching the movie, we have a lot of choreography. We're doing a lot of physical work in this room, getting up, sitting down, walking around, you know, running around, jumping around. We're doing a lot of things, and so our DP had to navigate all of that and still tell the story through the lens, and I think he did a brilliant job. Yeah, it was just everyone really wanted to be a part of this project, which was really nice. And so no one felt, even though we were kind of all on top of each other and kind of crammed, and it was a little bit hot at times because you couldn't have the air conditioning running or anything like that for noise purposes. I just feel like there was such a great vibe on set. We all wanted to be there, and we all genuinely respected one another and found each other very funny. Even, you know, the crew, we found the crew funny and the crew found us funny. And so there was it didn't feel like we were stepping on any toes. It just felt like we were kind of like a summer camp, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because since it's almost feels like a play, was it filmed in sort of like chronological order?
Yeah, pretty much for the most part. Yeah, it was filmed in chronological order. The only we had one other location outside of the house, which is the theater, and so that's kind of the opening of our film and the end of our film. So we had to film those on the same day, which I think was our first day of shooting. I think our first day of shooting was actually the theater scenes. So those were out of order, but everything once we're inside the house was pretty much shot chronologically, which was great for us, you know, because then we could we didn't have to go back in time. Essentially, we could just keep moving forward, which made the whole repetition thing a little bit easier to handle.
Yeah, that is true. The repetition thing was probably the greatest challenge. Your counterpart, Dan Fogler, because he's a really funny person, and since you don't get a lot of comedic roles, did you learn a lot from him?
Oh man, yeah. I learned a lot from everybody, honestly, and I was very intimidated. And I told Dan this too. I just got it off my chest the first day. You know, because everybody, Danny Pudi, Dan Fogler, Cleo Coleman, like they all have been in comedies. They've all done a lot of comedic roles, and I just really haven't had the opportunity. And so, yeah, when I walked on set, I just let him know what a fan I was, of his work, and also that I was a little bit intimidated. But he was the nicest guy, and what was so wonderful watching him is that he had no inhibitions. You know, he just tried things. He just had fun. He improvised a lot of what you see in the film is improvised. And it just you know, it gave everybody the permission to do the same and to be experimental and discover little moments. And I gotta say, Robert Schwartzman, our director, was so supportive of that and really wanted us to figure those things out. So it's funny because a lot of the quirks of all of our characters, and so for me, a lot of the quirks of Lisa came out of, not necessarily off the page, but came out of us having this week rehearsal where we could just try whatever we wanted. And if something felt really right or got a big laugh, I knew that that was the right thing to do, and I should explore that world a little bit more and move forward in that. And yeah, there was no judgment coming from anyone. And Dan and Danny Pudi in particular, who are, you know, kind of have these great comedic careers, would look at me and look at my choices and be like hysterically laughing. So it just made me feel very secure. You know, I didn't feel like they were passing judgment on me at all. They were just there and holding space for me to try new things.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to Danny Pudi. Interviewed him one time for a movie, and I think we talked about for like 6 minutes, and we never even talked about the movie because he just goes off on different tangents all over the place.
I love Danny Pudi. Danny is one of the nicest people in this industry. I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. And he's so funny and he's so subtle. I love him in this film too. He's like, all of his comedy choices are very subtle, whereas like Dan Fogler's character gets to be a little bit bigger, you know. And obviously Cleopatra Coleman's character is the biggest, maybe because she's just drunk the whole time. But Danny Pudi's character has these really funny moments that'll just be in a reaction or a look that he gives, you know, Maggie Q, or he gives Dan Fogler or whatever. You know, it'll just be in like these really small little moments that just have me cracking up watching.
Speaking of, Maggie Q doesn't do a lot of comedy either.
No.
Because a lot of people just think of her like in dramas and action and all this kind of stuff. How did she handle it on set? This must have been fish out of water for her too.
Well, I mean, if she felt like a fish out of water, you couldn't tell. She's so confident and so lovely, and she's not like her character at all. She's like the warmest person. She cares more about the world and how the world is being run, and saving animals is like a big thing for her. And so to see her be this kind of ice queen, and then the minute they yell cut, she would revert back to her very warm Maggie Q self, was great. She felt super confident in the role, and I think she's hilarious. She has some of my favorite, because, you know, she's very droll in her performance, and she has some of my favorite lines, like when she says, "I do not live here." I just like love the delivery on that. It's like so, you know. So I think she just was perfectly cast, and she seemed to have a really, really fun time doing it.
Excellent. How do you choose your roles now these days? I mean, this is an indie project, and it's a wonderful indie project. But do you do a lot of indies yourself?
I mean, firstly, my first love is independent film. That's kind of how I got my start in this industry. And there is something so magical about being on an indie set because, again, you don't have the same pressures as you would on a really big set. And there's not the politics, I guess, of bigger sets. There's just so many more people to manage. You know, crews on huge sets are giant, and you have to manage all of those departments. And there's a lot of, like, you know, bureaucracy, sometimes. And there's also a lot at stake, you know, when you're on a big film with a big budget, that much more money is at stake. So in independent film, one of the reasons why I think all actors really love independent film is we don't do it for the money. There's not a ton of money in it, but there is a lot more freedom in a creative sense. And that is kind of why we want to be actors, right? We want to be actors to be creatively free. We just also have to pay our bills. So we have to find that balance. But yeah, I mean, I just love independent film. And this was no exception. Robert had reached out to me on a Friday and sent me the script. I read the script. I loved the script. And told him like I'd be really happy to talk to him about this. And he was like, no, I want you to be in it. And we shoot Monday, where we start rehearsals on Monday. And this was like a Friday. And I thought, oh, okay, I guess great. Let's just do it. So it was one of those like really fast processes. And yeah, it was great. It was wonderful for him to reach out to me and see me in this role. Without even auditioning me, he just has known me from the past and seen some other things I've been in. So,
wow, that is excellent.
Yeah, I was shocked. I really was. I mean, he had a lot of trust in me, and I'm forever grateful for that.
It's a silly question to ask, but because of the times like this, how are you staying sane and creative?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I did shoot a little short film in my house here in the beginning of quarantine, around like April, May, when we were really in lockdown. I shot a little quarantine short with so my husband and I lived together, but funnily some of our best friends from New York City were visiting right as we got into lockdown, and they couldn't go back. I mean, they were wondering, should we go back to New York? But of course, at the time, the numbers were terrible in New York. So we just said to them, why don't you just stay in our guest bedroom? It's totally fine. Thinking it would be like a month and a half. And they ended up living here for 5 months. And so I decided like, okay, let's have a little creative challenge and make this short. So I wrote like a little short, and I utilized basically the 4 people who were living here to be the crew. And luckily, one of our friends from New York has like a hobby in photography. So we ended up having a really nice Sony camera, but he's never DP'd before. But I was like, you're the DP. That's it. You're the DP. We found some sound equipment and we just went ahead and did it. And it was a really, really fun, yet challenging experiment, because I decided to, so I wrote it and then I'm starring it, and I directed it, and then I edited it, I colored it, and I did the sound design just to see if I could, I just wanted to get my hands dirty in all the different kinds of departments that there are. It's given me such a respect for all the different departments and how hard, post-production is, and, all the different elements that go into making a film. So that was really, really fun. And outside of that, I'm just trying to be, in nature a lot, as much as I can. I do a lot of yoga, do a lot of exercising in my house. You just got to do what you got to do.
We're going to get to see that short film of yours.
Yeah, it's actually, I just put it up online. So if anyone follows me on Instagram, or it's on my Instagram, you'd have to scroll down a few things, or you can go, I have a website called emmabellefilm.com, and it's up there too. So it was just fun. I just wanted to make something and put it out there.
Now I as I'm about to wrap up, but one of the things I do notice that you have an awesome career, because you got into amazing projects like Frozen, which was a great movie. Somehow you got yourself into a cult film like Hatchet 2, Final Destination, which is a great series. What about these fans who keep on following you because you do these projects? I mean, it's terrific that they love you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, firstly, I'm very lucky to have been a part of all of those projects that you just mentioned. And the fact that there's some sort of overlap, of course, The Walking Dead being another one that the fan base, it has always been so loving and so supportive, and really stuck with me through many, many years. Because, all the things you mentioned, Frozen, Final Destination 5, Walking Dead, those were all 6-7 years ago now. And yet when I go out and I do a lot of conventions and I meet people, I also am on Cameo, which is this app where you can meet fans through the app. And I'm always blown away by the genuineness of the people who are fans of mine, and just how sweet and how supportive and how much they really do follow along with my career, even if it's just a small guest spot on a TV show here or there. They watch it and they make sure that they're up to date on what I'm doing. I don't have the right words to describe how it feels, but it just feels so lovely, and I'm so grateful for all of my fans who follow me.
Do you think you kind of shed that horror genre, persona away now?
I mean, never say never. There's a reason why everyone loves horror. Horror is such an umbrella category, and I think there's so many kind of interesting stories that can happen in the world of horror. So yeah, I mean, I would love to continue to do the right horror projects with the right teams of people, but I definitely made a genuine, I definitely was doing a lot of those one after another there for a little bit. So I wanted to sort of consciously step away and try to expand what I did. And I did that in that I did Dallas afterwards, and and then I did a couple independent films that have nothing to do with zombies or horror or dying. And now with The Argument, I would love to do more comedy. But I just love a good story. If it's a really good story, I don't mind. It could be horror, it could be romance, it could be dramedy, it could be whatever. It has to be a really good story and a really good character.
That's a great answer. And I have one more question. Obviously, the news broke out this morning that The Walking Dead is ending, and you being an alumni of The Walking Dead from the very, very first season.
First season, yep.
You're probably getting a ton of texts or calls or about it and everything. What do you think about the end of The Walking Dead?
Oh man. Well, firstly, I mean, that show has had so many lives, If you look at The Walking Dead now, season 10, right? To season 1, the leadership has changed so many times. Creatively, it's changed so many times. I mean, basically there's nobody from the first season still alive except for Carol. So, it's sort of like the show that keeps reinventing itself over and over and over again. And every single reinvention is maybe different, but just as good. So I think you got to end on a high note. I always feel that way about shows. And so if that's what the creative team feels like they need to do in order to really end a decade of telling this story, that's incredible. Not many stories have the chance to live that long. And I don't even think it'd be done because there's, so many spinoffs, and it's such a big part of pop culture. So yeah, I think everything has to end at some point. And you don't want shows to end when they're doing this. You want shows to end when they're here, So I respect the decision, and I just think wow, I'm so grateful to have been a part of that show.
Did you miss playing Amy?
Yeah, very much. I mean, I missed being a part of it altogether. It was, the people, the crew, the directors who came on board, the whole product was just so high. It was such a high caliber, and those kinds of opportunities don't come around super often in a career, and especially having it be well done and then also beloved by the world over. I mean, it's such a giant show, as you know. I mean, it's everywhere. I get invited to go to all parts of the world to meet fans. Literally last year I went to Saudi Arabia, which I never thought that I would go to the Middle East ever in my life. But they had their first big convention and they asked me to go, and I couldn't say no to seeing a totally different kind of world. And it's just things like that. It's a gift that keeps giving, and I think that it will forever be cemented in history as one of the longest running and most beloved shows.
That is true. I mean, that's why you're probably very thankful for all the fans that you have around the world.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So much so. So much so.
Well, hey, Emma, this is a great conversation. Thank you very much for bringing us The Argument. Everyone should check it out because you are indeed very hilarious. You should do more comedy.
Oh, thank you. I would love that. I would also love to do more comedy. That is, I'm going to tell my agents right now. I'll be like, listen, they told me I should do more comedy, so give me more comedy.
You should. Hey, thank you very much. We should do this again next time.
Okay, absolutely. That would be great.
All right. Bye now.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.